I am the President and General Manager of ITT's Night Vision division, and we're the world's largest manufacturer of night vision equipment for the armed forces, basically, but also for police forces and for those of affluent canoers that like to go out at night. I get started with TOC, I guess, with Eli, and I heard the 1983 stories, and we were involved in one of the initial applications of OP. And that was shortly following some failures with MRP and some failures with just-in-time, and we got to OPT, and this was in Santa Ana, California, and all of a sudden, sanity began to reside in a place that didn't know much of it. And we conquered a lot of production problems by looking at 8 manufacturing centers as opposed to the 123 that we traditionally looked at. And this is my 5th TOC cycle. Because one of the things, if you're looking at strategy, where is your constraint? Is it in the market or is it in the shop? And I think that's a really important thing to consider. So that's what I'd like to talk about somewhat today.
The question to you is, in going the TOC route, did you find that you have to change rules, fundamental rules? If so, what are the rules? And how have you gone about changing them? What were the difficulties? What were the methods? And what were the results?
I think the biggest difficulty that we've had is try to accommodate the theory of constraints with the ITT cost accounting system. Now, this was invented by Harold Janine, a hard thing to shake. And this really got to be a very big strategic question when we decided that we were going to play very heavily in the international market. Because whereas in the United States, in military procurement, there's some specific rules you can follow. And you can take your costs and mark them up and then have it audited by the government. But when you're dealing overseas, as I told our chief financial officer, most of these countries don't really give a damn about ITT's accounting procedures. They're interested in a price. So the biggest issue we faced was how do you accommodate yourself in a very flexible pricing arrangement? And we built a thing called a business analysis system, which is really a fleshed out theory of constraints using throughput and material costs and expenses. And we justified getting more business into place because we could prove that the biggest lever we had was more sales, even if we had to take a slightly lower margin overall. The system at that time did not accommodate that. And that was one big battle. Every time I think the battle is won, some new guy shows up and tries to start it over again. But I think that was one of the big things that we had to do, to justify flexible pricing, to go out after bigger volume at slightly less margin, and thereby grow our business. Because that's where the leverage is, and that's not percent by percent. And I think that a good deal of our executives now inside of ITT understand that.
If you notice, the answer was concentrating on changing a rule upwards, not downwards. By the way, did you have to change some rules downwards, from you down into the pyramid?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. By the way, listen to the person. You're talking about cost accounting mentality? You heard him. ITT was at least, one of the shrines of cost accounting. So even there you can change rules, especially the most sacred rule was the margin. So it's even more important today to know how do you use your existing capacity in order to get more throughput.
After I left, the new general manager appointed an engineer. I'm not knocking engineers here, but to run the operation. And he was not schooled in some of these things. And he let the buffer management fall apart, and we got in some very serious trouble with our customers not delivering on time. And of course, the profits went down because the throughput was not there. And it became a very serious issue that we thought we had the thing locked, but we didn't have it locked throughout the organization. It was locked pretty well, believe me. Finance was one of the people that were concerned about this. And they understood TOC. So I think one of the problems is really getting this to the whole organization. We've been working on that for a long time. And sometimes you think you have it, but you can put a guy that doesn't understand the realities of it, and does not understand the philosophy of it, in a key position, and you can disappear very quickly.
And what you are talking about, if I understood you correctly, is the problem of, even though we have done education right across the board, we are still depending so much on few individuals that if they are in the company, everything moves beautifully. If we take them out in order to move them to another place, we see a deterioration, and quite a rapid deterioration, or even stagnation. Let's understand what we are dealing with here. Two different problems appears to be with the same symptom. One is a pocket of holistic approach within an ocean of local optima. you are always running the danger that a top person will come from this ocean of local optima and try to run a place which is holistic approach. Even if this person says that he agrees 100%, he does not understand how to think and act according to the holistic approach, and he can drive the system very quickly into the ground, especially when the level of performance that you reach by TOC are high enough to spoil the clients. The clients are used to 99% delivery on time within a very short time. At the beginning, they were very happy about it. After 3 months, they take it for granted. Now you put somebody else in place, and now the situation deteriorates to 90% on time, and you have a huge drop in throughput. This is one problem that Neil is talking about. I don't believe that, Greg, you're talking about the same problem. What Greg is talking about is how do you bring a person to be able to see the whole business, no matter on which detail he's looking on, so he can really drive, lead, and manage a whole organization. These people are relatively scarce. One of the mistakes that we are doing today is that we don't put special efforts to grow and educate such people. For reaching this level, either you are born with it, or you have to go through much more education to reach this level. If you are looking only on the people who are born with it, you are talking about a resource that, if you are on TOC, it's just a matter of time until this resource will become the constraint. Simply, no matter with how many you start, due to the fact that you have them and you have such a powerful theory to guide you, you grow and grow and grow. You grow to the extent that they become the constraint, and now you take them out from one place and you leave a hole. Here we are not talking about a strategy issue, we are talking about super strategy issue. We are talking about the fact that we have to start to realize that we can considerably elevate the capabilities of a person. Those people that we start to understand, these are the constraints, you have to grow more. But then it's not a week or two. These people have to understand how, no matter which point in the organization, no matter which detail of the organization they are looking on, how to see it always within the context of the whole organization. This is really the ultimate theory of constraints. But in order to reach this level, you have to understand it from all sides. And that's what takes time to teach them, or to find these few that have been born with it. Let's understand it again. Okay? The rate of growth which you experience when you are embarking on theory of constraint is not a function of limitation of the market, because you know exactly how to evaporate these limitations. And it's not a function of the limitation of machines, because you know exactly how to solve it like that. The real constraint on a company which is for quite some time on theory of constraints are the people which are able to see the whole system no matter on which point they look. And they are able to move the crowds. You don't need many of them, but in every important area you need one. And when you take this person out, since the level of performance is so high relative to what you have regularly, you see immediately a drop. Is it understood, yes or no?
When we began working on this, this is before there was any scheduling software available, the best methodology we found was Blue Machine Game. I don't know if you've ever played that.
What Neil is talking about is the production simulator.
About 2 days into it, that if you could schedule this bottleneck properly, you could get more throughput through the organization, and a lot of lights went on for him and his production schedulers, establishing buffer management reports and things of that sort. Once we had those in line, he became like the Statue of Liberty walking around with the torch, and he became the most converted guy you could ever imagine. You know, just giving some people some tools, some education, some knowledge, and then be able to go in there and say, okay, we're going to start this next week and see what happens. And everybody said you can take a big risk, but he got in there and he made it work. We have decided over a long period of time that we want the constraint in the factory, and we want the constraint in the exhaust department. And this is a department that has 100 exhaust stations that cost $250,000 a piece, so it's very highly capitalized, and the the subordinated processes that feed it are highly capitalized. So what we're trying to do is make optimum use of that capital. And so we've done a couple of different iterations of this. The first one back in the early 90s when the defense budgets began to collapse. And we went and developed some future reality trees. And two things came out of that. One was to try to get in the export business, and the second was to get in a commercial, consumer-type business.
That you were not before at all?
No.
How much is it now for your business?
It's about 15, pushing 20%, but it's...
And export, how much is it now?
Export is about 35%.
So in total, it's now more than half the business?
Yes.
Something that was zero at that time?
Yes. And the second issue, and we went through, once we did that, we became rather successful. We had to add more capacity in the factory. And we're back now to going into another iteration of what's our future reality tree. It's to get into different types of consumer type of commercial businesses. And this is more sophisticated technology, and we're looking at X-ray detectors and things of that sort. But at any given time, we take a look at what's our capacity going to be utilized at over the next 2 years. And that's the question we ask every 6 months. And that drives us in our strategy, is what we want to do.
How frequently would you say the constraint moves out of the place that you want it to be? Does it happen every 2 months, every 6 months, every year, every 2 years?
In this business, it's, I would say, 3 years on an average.
Which most other companies would be delighted, especially when you're dealing here with very high-tech products and the market is unbelievably competitive. Am I right?
Yes.
And the market is changing all the time. Let's understand there is two alternatives. The first thing, they're asking the question, where do I want the constraint to be? Show me a company which is not on TOCs that will even ask such a question. Every mature TOC company asks this question, debate, find out the answer, find out that the answer is quite decisive, and from now on they have a very clear direction. Whatever I do in order that the constraint will stay in the same place while I'm increasing constantly the throughput. This is a beautiful guideline, and if you're doing it somewhat okay, then from time to time you'll get a glitch or a threat that the constraint will move out, but you're not talking about things that happens every month. You're talking about something that if you're really moving nicely, it can happen once in 2 years. The threat that the constraint will move out of the areas that you want. There is even a better way. Unfortunately, very few companies dare to do it. I was talking about it in my session about strategies that I gave in the satellite program. This is tape number 8. Over there, what I've showed is a tree called Immunize the Future of the Company. And over there, if you notice, I did not ask the question, where do I want the constraint to be? Instead, I've showed that the beginning of the implementation is start by raising the level of performance drastically. This is injection 100 and 110. You do it in such a way that you bring the company, everyone in the company, every department, to realize that the impossible is possible. The things that they were absolutely sure are total impossibility, like, for example, in production without adding any machines and manpower to increase the throughput by 50%. Most companies, when you start, will tell you impossible. Then they find out that it was easy. Or, if you are talking about all the projects on time, many will tell you impossible. And then you find out, what do you mean? Big deal, even when we cut the total duration to 1/2. Once you bring all the functions into that, which means you have implemented injection 100 and 110, now starts a new question, starts to bubble in the company. And the question is, we know that we can do whatever we want. What do we want to do? It's not so easy to reach this stage. I believe now that with the existing know-how, if you are employing the best processes, you can bring your company from chaos to this stage within about a year to a year and a half. And then the question starts to be, what do we want to be? And then there is injection 140 on this future reality tree. Very few companies dare to even start addressing that injection. But if you do it, then you are getting a period, the period that you are now getting of peace and quiet. Peace and quiet while the throughput continues to go like crazy is not anymore a year or 2 or 3. as a matter of fact 2 or 3 years, it is 10 years. But for that, you have to do something that is considered an impossibility, which means it is hard work for something like 6 months to a year. Unfortunately, very few companies have implemented it. I believe that this is simply because we are not promoting it enough. I would highly recommend to you that if you are at the stage that you know already how powerful is TOC, that you will look into this tape, study the futurality tree of Immunize the Future of the company, because if you do that, you will not run into the problems that otherwise you will. You will not run into problems where you are expanding in such a rate and then you are making the mistake of taking a key person from one area to another and leave a hole behind, and you will not run into, oops, the constraint is going to move out of where I want it to be. And then, of course, we have to do some heroic actions. Okay? This is my recommendation to all of you. It's by far easier than to do it the other way. Let's not lose sight of what we are dealing with. These people here that complain about these problems still have performance that every other company would give their right hand to have this performance. Just to demonstrate it to you again. Wes, let me ask you a question. If you told me that you don't want to answer, I understand it perfectly. How much the total volume of your group grows per year? Total? 35%. 35%? Thank you. I'll tell you why I was insisting on it. Because a company which is TOC company must have minimum 30% growth a year, and I don't care if the market is flat or not. Now, once you have 30% growth per year, now bitch and moan and I will listen. That's excellent, because even at that stage, you know that you can do much better. But these are the numbers. There is a silver bullet. There are such results in reality.
Thank you very much.